What if decluttering wasn't just about cleaning, but about reclaiming parts of yourself you didn't even know were slipping? Most people think getting rid of stuff is about tidiness, order, a clean shelf. But for many seniors, something far more powerful is happening beneath the surface. They're discovering that when they release even a little clutter, just one item, one corner, one habit, they don't just make space. They regain stability. They move with more ease. They think more clearly. They even sleep deeper. Not because they lifted weights or followed a program, but because their home stopped working against them. Decluttering can be gentle. It can be emotional. It can feel almost invisible. But the right daily ritual, done consistently, can reawaken your strength in ways that don't feel like effort at all. And if you've ever moved one object and suddenly felt lighter, that wasn't an accident. That was your nervous system exhaling. So if you've got that one spot in your home that's been quietly nagging at you for months, maybe now's the time. Start there. And if you believe small changes can change everything, go ahead and like this video. You're not just tidying. You're taking your power back. Elena Barnett never considered herself weak. She had lived through harder things than aging, divorce, raising 2 boys alone, losing her youngest sister unexpectedly. But at 76, living alone in her modest townhouse in Bend, Oregon, she'd started to feel something unfamiliar: hesitation. It began in small ways. Holding onto furniture as she walked down the hallway. Avoiding the second floor because her knees ached too much. Letting things pile up, not out of laziness, but because bending, stretching, and reaching felt like they belonged to someone else's body now. Then came the fall. It was a quiet Thursday morning. She was making tea. A spoon had slipped from the dish rack and fallen to the floor. She bent too fast, turned too sharply, and the tile caught her off balance. She didn't break anything, but the bruises lasted weeks. And the fear lasted longer. Her sons suggested a cane. Her neighbor offered a yoga DVD. But Elena did something neither of them expected. She looked around her kitchen and really saw it. Not the clutter. Not the dishes. But the tension in her body every time she tried to move in it. That's when she began. She didn't call it decluttering at first. She just wanted to feel safe in her own space again. One day, she cleared the kitchen drawer that no longer closed properly. The next, she moved her recycling bin so she didn't have to twist awkwardly to reach it. Then she tackled the collection of spoons building up by the sink, not all at once, just a few at a time. And something shifted. Her muscles stopped tensing up every time she reached. She wasn't as winded by simple tasks. Her balance improved, not because she was exercising, but because she was interacting with her space intentionally. Decluttering wasn't the goal, but it became the method. And what surprised her most wasn't the cleaner counters. It was how much clearer her mind felt, how much steadier her steps became, how much more she trusted herself again. Elena didn't reinvent her life. She just re-entered it, one drawer, one shelf, one habit at a time. And without realizing it, she had created 5 small rituals that didn't just lighten her home. They restored her confidence. You're about to hear each one. Not as tips from a professional, but as truths from someone who simply paid attention. Ritual 1. The 2-hand toss. Every morning, Elena stood at the counter beside her kitchen sink, the one space that seemed to attract clutter no matter how many times she cleared it. A couple of spoons drying awkwardly on a dish towel. A stained coffee mug she kept meaning to replace. A few grocery coupons, unopened mail, and that ever-growing pile of odds and ends that somehow always migrated there after dinner. Nothing dramatic. Just quiet build-up. The kind of clutter that's easy to ignore until it starts weighing on you in ways you can't quite explain. Most mornings, she'd go through the motions without thinking. Grab one thing, toss it aside, shift another, tell herself she'd finish later. But one morning, her wrist felt stiff. Nothing serious, just a reminder that her body didn't move the way it used to. As she reached for a glass jar, she hesitated. Then, without thinking, she brought her other hand to help. She lifted the jar using both hands. It felt different. More secure. More controlled. And oddly satisfying. The next morning, she did it again. Not just with the jar, but with everything. The spoon, the mug, the flyer. Both hands. One motion at a time. Lift. Place. Move. No rushing. It became a ritual. One she never planned, but one her body looked forward to. She called it her two-hand toss. Every morning, she chose a single small space to reset, usually by the sink, but sometimes on the table or beside the couch. She wasn't deep cleaning. She wasn't organizing. She was simply clearing, with presence, balance, and both hands in motion. And after a few weeks, she noticed something. Her movements felt smoother. Her shoulders didn't slump as much. She could stand longer without needing to sit down. Even her back, which usually tightened after bending too long, felt looser, more willing to cooperate. She wasn't doing physical therapy. She wasn't lifting weights. She was just engaging her body fully, in tiny, consistent moments. When you use both hands together, you naturally activate your core. Your brain works a little harder to coordinate both sides of the body. Your posture aligns. Your balance centers. And instead of relying on your dominant hand to carry the load, you begin moving as a whole person again. Elena had spent years feeling like her strength was slowly slipping away. But now, she was reclaiming it, not through workouts or routines, but through simple, intentional movement layered into everyday tasks. The two-hand toss wasn't about speed or efficiency. It was about waking up the muscles that everyday life had put to sleep. It reminded her she was still capable, still grounded, still in control, not just of her home, but of how she moved within it. Try it for yourself. Pick one spot. It doesn't need to be big. Just promise yourself that every item you move today, you'll do it with both hands. Let it slow you down. Let it reconnect you with your strength. Because sometimes, the smallest rituals are the ones that quietly rebuild everything you thought you'd lost. Ritual 2, the hallway hover check. There was a narrow hallway in Elena's home, just outside her bedroom, that never stayed clear for long. At the end of it sat a short bench, originally placed there as a convenience. A place to set down grocery bags or take off shoes. But over the years, it had become something else entirely, a resting ground for everything she didn't want to deal with. A shopping bag filled with things to return. A book she swore she'd start. A folded sweater. A flashlight. Even an empty plant pot she didn't remember putting there. She passed that bench at least a dozen times a day. Sometimes she'd glance at it with annoyance. Sometimes she'd pretend not to notice. But mostly, she just walked by, telling herself she'd deal with it when she had more energy. Then one morning, while sipping her tea, she had a thought. What if the energy she needed wasn't waiting for her? What if it was in that very bench? She didn't try to clear the whole thing. That had never worked. Instead, she created a small rule. Every time I walk past, I'll hover, just for a second. Just long enough to move one thing. And so began her ritual, the hallway hover check. It was simple. She'd approach the bench, slow her steps, and bend, not all the way down, not to the floor, just low enough to grab one item. No sitting. No squatting. Just a steady hover, like lowering into a seat that wasn't quite there. At first, it felt awkward. Her thighs trembled. Her balance wobbled. But after a few days, it didn't. Her legs grew stronger. Her ankles more stable. She could lower herself with more control and hold that position longer than she expected. Without realizing it, Elena was retraining the very muscles that protect against one of the greatest fears in aging, falling. By choosing a hover instead of a full bend, she was reducing joint strain, building endurance, and strengthening her ability to recover from sudden shifts in balance. It wasn't exercise in the traditional sense. But it was real-life motion, the kind of movement that teaches the body how to respond when you drop something, miss a step, or need to catch yourself. And emotionally, it gave her something even better. Each time she hovered and picked something up, she felt accomplishment without exhaustion. No shame. No pressure. Just progress. Little by little, the pile disappeared. Not because she forced herself to finish it in a day, but because she returned to it, moment by moment, with presence and power. And the bench? It became what it was always meant to be, a clear, peaceful corner in her hallway. But more importantly, it became her proof that even brief, mindful movements could change how she felt in her body. When was the last time you paused in front of a cluttered corner instead of rushing past it? What if, starting today, you gave yourself permission to do less, but do it with purpose? Try it this week. Choose one surface. Don't clear it. Just hover. Just move one thing. Let your body lead. And see what strength you wake up in the process. Ritual 3. The dish dry declutter. Elena had never liked waiting. Waiting in traffic. Waiting on hold. Waiting for dishes to dry. It always felt like wasted time, until she found a way to make those in-between moments work for her. After washing her dishes one evening, she stood in her kitchen, towel in hand, watching water droplets cling to the rim of a plate she had just rinsed. She thought about drying everything immediately like she usually did, but instead, she paused. She looked around, at a nearby drawer that hadn't been opened in weeks. Something clicked. Rather than stand there idly while her dishes air-dried, she opened that drawer and simply began to explore. She wasn't looking to organize. She wasn't even planning to throw anything out. She just wanted to see what was inside. A measuring spoon she hadn't used in years. A brittle rubber band. A faded plastic straw still in its wrapper. Without any pressure or decision-making stress, she quietly removed the things that no longer belonged, things that had served their purpose once but were now just lingering. And just like that, she created a ritual. The dish dry declutter. It became her moment of gentle filtering, done while her plates dripped dry on the rack. No timers. No expectations. Just a few minutes of slow, intentional movement. But over time, those few minutes began to matter. Every time she opened a drawer or reached onto a shelf, she started noticing how her hands moved. How her wrists bent. How long she could hold a jar before feeling tired. She wasn't stretching, but her joints were loosening. She wasn't working out, but her grip strength improved. And surprisingly, the stiffness in her fingers, especially in the mornings, began to ease. Elena's body wasn't being pushed. It was being engaged, gently, purposefully, and in a way that felt entirely natural. Her mind benefited too. These quiet moments allowed her to focus, to breathe slower, to think about what she truly used in her daily life and what was simply sitting there, taking up space and energy. There was no guilt in letting things go. She wasn't being wasteful. She was being selective, curating a home that supported who she was now. Some days she'd only remove one thing. Other days, 5 or 6. But the number didn't matter. What mattered was the rhythm. The returning. The consistency. And in that rhythm, her confidence grew. Her home got lighter. And so did she. She didn't have to carve out a whole day to declutter. She simply used the time her dishes needed to drip dry. Try it yourself. Next time you wash your dishes and wait for them to dry, open just one drawer. Not to clean it. Not to judge it. Just to notice. To gently sort. To see what no longer serves you. It may not seem like much. But over time, that quiet act of motion, paired with mindfulness, can soften your joints, sharpen your thinking, and create more space than you ever thought possible. Because when your home becomes lighter, so do you. And sometimes, strength returns in the smallest windows of time. Ritual 4. The slow shelf stretch. Fridays used to be just another day for Elena, nothing particularly special. But now, she looks forward to them in a quiet, personal way. Because Fridays became the day she reconnected with her body through something surprisingly simple, a shelf. Not all at once. Not in a rush. But one shelf at a time, gently, deliberately, and with full attention. She called it her slow shelf stretch. It started the afternoon she reached up to grab a jar of cloves from the spice rack and realized she couldn't quite stretch as far as she used to. Her shoulder tensed. Her upper arm felt stiff. She had to tiptoe just to reach something that had always been within easy grasp. That small struggle stayed with her. And the next Friday, she walked to the same shelf, took a deep breath, and made a decision. She was going to empty it, but not quickly. Not with distraction. Not with a trash bag in hand. She was going to empty it with awareness. One item at a time, she lifted, stretched, turned. She paid attention to the motion in her shoulders, the subtle ache in her neck, the twist in her waist. She breathed through it, not pushing past discomfort, but listening to it. By the time the shelf was clear, she felt more awake, not just in her space, but in her limbs. She noticed she had rotated her torso a dozen times without thinking about it. She had gently lifted her arms above her head. She had stretched, held, and twisted, all while simply moving things she already owned. That Friday, she didn't just declutter a spice rack. She moved through a full range of motion, without a mat, without representatives, without a clock. The next Friday, she chose the hallway bookshelf. The week after that, a small cabinet under the bathroom sink. Every week, a new shelf. A new set of motions. A new opportunity to check in with her body. She wasn't training. She wasn't performing. She was reclaiming comfort in her own movements, something she hadn't felt in years. And once the shelf was clear, she asked herself a simple question. Does this still fit the life I'm living now? Not everything made the cut. Some items were beautiful but no longer useful. Others were useful but no longer brought joy. She kept only what supported her current self, not the version of her from 10 years ago. This act of clearing, paired with breath, motion, and mindfulness, became more than a chore. It became a form of self-respect. Elena discovered that shelves aren't just storage spaces. They are small stages for personal movement, physical feedback, and emotional clarity. And the body responds when it's invited into the process gently and consistently. If you're looking for a place to begin, try what she did. Pick one shelf. Just one. Don't rush. Don't overthink. Don't plan the whole day. Just move with intention. Stretch as you reach. Twist slowly. Breathe deeply. Let the act of emptying become a quiet conversation between your home and your spine. Because sometimes, the strength you think you lost is still there, tucked between a few forgotten items, just waiting for your hands to come back to life. Ritual 5. The Evening Entryway Reset. Elena never liked the feeling of going to bed with something unfinished. But she didn't mean chores. What unsettled her most was visual noise, the little piles, the scattered shoes, the subtle signs that her space had been handed over to chaos. And nowhere in her home made that more obvious than the entryway. The front door area wasn't large, but it always ended up crowded. A few envelopes that had been brought in but never opened. A pair of gardening gloves she meant to return to the shed. Reusable bags slouched by the coat rack. Shoes that never quite made it to the closet. A flyer about a local health screening that she wasn't sure she wanted to attend. For a long time, she ignored it. It was just the drop zone. Everyone has one. Right? But something changed when she started tripping over a sandal she thought she'd already put away. It was late at night. The light was dim. And suddenly, a shoe she didn't even need had become a safety hazard. That's when she made a new decision. Each night before bed, she would visit the entryway one last time. Not to organize. Not to deep clean. Just to reset. She called it her evening entryway reset, a simple, 5-minute ritual that grounded her body and calmed her mind. She would slowly scan the area, one item at a time. Anything that didn't belong, mail, bags, flyers, shoes, she moved it. Not because someone told her to. Not because she felt guilty. But because it helped her feel settled. The impact was far greater than she expected. Physically, it reduced her chance of tripping or stumbling during the night, especially when she got up to check the door or grab a glass of water. Mentally, it became a powerful signal of closure, her way of telling her brain, the day is done. And emotionally, it reinforced a quiet but crucial truth. She was still in charge of her space. Even when the rest of the world felt unpredictable. Even when her body moved slower. Even when things felt out of her hands, this was still hers to decide. Over time, this ritual did something remarkable. It strengthened her executive function, the part of the brain responsible for planning, focus, and organization. Something that naturally declines with age if it's not actively engaged. But Elena wasn't doing crossword puzzles or memory games. She was simply clearing her doorway. Every night, she got to practice awareness. She had to decide what stayed, what moved, and what no longer belonged. That decision-making kept her sharp, quietly, consistently, and without pressure. It also gave her a sense of completion, a kind of emotional exhale. She didn't go to bed feeling like the house was winning. She went to bed knowing she had tended to it. And in return, the house began tending to her. If you're looking for one place to start, especially at the end of a long day, start here. Walk to your front door tonight. Look around. Notice what doesn't belong in that space. Then, one by one, move each item back to where it serves you best. Don't worry about perfection. Don't time yourself. Just engage with it, gently, fully. Because when the first and last place you see each day is clear, something inside you starts to feel clear too. And in that stillness, you just might find the confidence, safety, and independence that's been quietly waiting to come home. Elena never set out to become an example. She wasn't chasing a trend, and she certainly wasn't looking to impress anyone with how minimal her home looked. In truth, she didn't even like the word decluttering. It sounded too mechanical, too impersonal, like something meant for closets and attics, not for people with full lives and full hearts. All she wanted was to feel steady again. Steady on her feet. Steady in her routines. Steady in a home that had slowly started to feel unfamiliar, like it was quietly slipping out of her hands. So she did what felt manageable. She started small. She cleared one drawer. Adjusted one habit. Moved one object at a time, with care, with breath, and with full awareness of how her body responded. And what she discovered wasn't just order. It was strength. The kind she thought she'd lost. Not the kind measured in push-ups or steps walked. But the strength to trust herself again. To feel safe in motion. To reclaim her days, not through control, but through calm. Each ritual brought a different piece of that back. Her legs grew stronger through hovering. Her joints loosened through slow sorting. Her shoulders relaxed with each mindful stretch. Her balance returned as she moved with intention. And her mind, once clouded by decision fatigue, began to feel sharp and settled. But here's what surprised even her. None of it felt like effort. It didn't drain her. It didn't overwhelm her. Because the secret wasn't in doing more. It was in noticing what was already there, and moving through it with presence. And that's the gift these quiet rituals offered. They didn't just reduce clutter. They rebuilt trust. In her space. In her body. In her ability to adapt, even at 76. So if you're standing in a room that feels heavy, or staring at a shelf that makes your shoulders sag just looking at it, take a breath. You don't need a system. You don't need to plan out your weekend. You don't need to get it all done. You just need to begin. Pick one corner, one drawer, one shelf, and move your hands. Move your breath. Move your body, gently, slowly, and without judgment. Let that one moment become your anchor. And let the strength hiding in the mess begin to rise. Because maybe, like Elena, you're not here to impress anyone. You're just here to feel steady again. And if any of these rituals gave you a fresh way to think about your space, or yourself, go ahead and hit that like button. Let us know in the comments. Which ritual are you going to try first this week? And don't forget to subscribe to Wise Aging Seniors, where decluttering isn't just about tidying up. It's about rediscovering the quiet strength that's been in you all along.